Welcome to Peak Oil News for June 21st, 2022. Ecuador halts oil production in the face of escalating protests. Escalating protests in 3 provinces of Ecuador have caused the government to declare a force majeure for all exploration, production, and transportation of oil. Therefore, all oil from Ecuador is now offline, roughly 400,000 barrels per day. Allegedly, the protests are centered around indigenous peoples' complaints against the economic policies of Guillermo Lasso and the deteriorating economic environment since the COVID lockdowns, particularly the form of skyrocketing food and fuel costs. Ecuador has proven reserves of some 8.2 billion barrels, with some estimates of suspected reserves going up all the way to 45 billion barrels. It produces about 400,000 barrels per day, as said before, in normal circumstances, and Ecuador's state-owned oil company, Ecuador, had hoped to double its daily production over the next 5 years. However, it needs $12 billion in capital investments for that to occur, and the instability would seem to make that less likely to happen. The protests have seen 83 people injured. There are reports of detainments and kidnappings on both sides. The government has declared a state of emergency and a nighttime curfew in Quito, the capital. The Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities, which has toppled several presidents over the last 2.5 decades, is mobilizing the protesters and is demanding a reduction of diesel costs and gas costs, price controls on food, and renegotiating personal bank loans, and a general rejection of policies set by the IMF. Minister of the Interior Patricio Carrillo has called for criminalizing the protest, describing them as a week of blocked roads and oil wells, kidnappings of police and military personnel, and looting, all disguised as a struggle in order to provoke victimization. Whatever be the case, 400,000 barrels per day is a big hit to the total global daily output, particularly considering disruptions are already occurring in Libya and other parts of the world. Also, one of the most prevalent ways called for to relieve the price at the pump in Ecuador is to ban all Ecuadorian oil exports. More signs of a bifurcation in oil markets, a growing phenomenon that I've been pulling my hair out over for at least a month. And also in South American news, Colombia has elected Gustavo Petro, a highly left-leaning former guerrilla, as their president, defeating center-right Rodolfo Hernandez. Petro had promised throughout his campaign to end fracking in Colombia and all other oil exploration. This means that promising offshore reserves of Colombian oil will likely falter in development and remain stranded. While the fracking industry in Colombia had not been particularly fruitful, many observers and industry experts did see potential in this offshore reserve, which were seen to be possibly as big as Brazil's. Current President Ivan Duque had been aggressive about offshore exploration and development, as it was believed that the 4 main offshore basins could contain around 32 billion barrels of crude, 16 times more than the country's current reserves. Petro has not called for an immediate capping or destruction of Colombia's oil industry, but has made it clear in his campaign that exploration and new development will be ended and current wells will simply work until depletion. He intends to make the country's economy more dependent on manufacturing and agriculture, both of which require fossil fuels, but okay. And in our third story, Iraq is attempting to buy EXXON's stake in West Corner 1 after the Goliath Oil Company announced it planned to exit the project. The Basra Oil Company is likely to take the stake off of EXXON's hands. As to why EXXON is exiting Iraq, the reasons seem complicated and murky and go all the way back to the way oil contracts were handed out in the wake of the 2003 invasion. All Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi said was that ExxonMobil is considering exiting Iraq for reasons that are to do with its internal management practices, decisions, and not because of the particular situation in Iraq. Some have suggested it also has to do with the politics revolving around EXXON's involvement in oil production in the Kurdistan Autonomous Region, who is at odds with Baghdad. If I find out more on this story, I will report it. But for now, thanks for watching. See you soon. Citations below.